Now, from Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
Happy Thursday, everybody. It is Jacob Albracht alongside Tommy Castor. Chad Chambers producing for us. It is Sports Daily. We are glad to be here with you for the next couple hours. Appreciate you tuning in right here on KFH. Maybe you're listening to us live on a stream at kfhradio.com. Maybe you're watching us right now. Facebook, YouTube, X. You can do that as well. Just search for KFH. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about today. Well, some not so fun if you're a Royals fan. But we'll get into the Royals. Another loss last night in Oakland. Unacceptable. We will get with our K-State insider, Tim Fitzgerald. Been a couple weeks, so we'll get the latest on any movement for K-State football. We still got to talk to Fitz about what happened there with their latest basketball recruit and a reportedly record-breaking deal. So that'll come at the top of the next hour. Looking forward to that conversation. We can get more into Chiefs, Royals, potentially there. On the Kansas side of the border. It's all there out there for us. Tommy, good morning. How are you?
Hey, happy Thursday. Good to see you today. I hope, those people that had the day off yesterday for Juneteenth had a good day off and able to get kind of rested and recharged and ready for the rest of the week.
We got a lot of other fun stuff today, too. That IHOP hotline is open for you at 869-1240. Try the Have It All breakfast. One slice of classic thick and fluffy French toast, 2 buttermilk pancakes, 2 strips of hickory smoked bacon, 2 pork sausage links, 2 pieces of thick cut ham, 2 eggs, and hash browns. And we appreciate IHOP's support in bringing us that hotline. We're also going to give you a couple opportunities to win prizes today. One opportunity will be for Kenny Chesney and Zach Brown Band tickets up at Arrowhead Stadium. The other will be for some free HTO iced tea and free rain coffee. So make sure you stay tuned for those opportunities throughout the day as well today. Lots of fun, as it always is. It's the first official day of summer, I believe, even though it's felt like summer. It's been a little cooler this week. Got out to Crestview. We appreciate Crestview Country Club support, Tommy. And we can get to that right now. I went out last night. Evening. Yeah, it was evening night. And I was out playing golf with one of the kids. You took your family to the pool and saw the rest of my family
I did.
At the pool. So it was quite a night for us over at the club. We appreciate Crestview's support. Give them a call, learn about all the cool things they have and the ways you could join. But that was great. That was just the right way to do it.
Yeah, by the way, it's pretty rare that you're the one playing golf and I'm the one at the pool.
I know.
The roles were reversed a little bit yesterday, but it sounded like you shot one of the best rounds you've had in a long time.
So when I played enough to even pay attention or keep track, I could get around 90. I could get around 90. Never really devoted any time to clubs or making sure I've got the right things or whatever. And that's right where I was. And yesterday I would not have been on pace for 90, but I was about 5 strokes better than the handicap. And the thing for me was too, because there was definitely, I'm going to kick the ball over there, or that was a duff shot limit. I had 2 legitimate pars, which I don't even know when the last time that happened for me. I mean, it's been a minute, but that's the now 3rd set of 9 holes that I've played this year. Worst day I've maybe ever had at the range. I was like, this is going to be terrible. I couldn't do anything at the range. And then it translated fine and had a great time. More importantly, we were cruising around, jamming to some T-Swift with my 9-year-old daughter. She's, racing the golf cart and doing all the fun stuff. That was what was awesome. The golf was good too.
Hey, it keeps you coming back. I always say out of 10 shots, as long as the 10th one is okay, the previous 9 could be terrible, but if the 10th one is, just slightly okay, that's what keeps you coming back.
I did double bogey the final or the 9th hole there. I was going to be I think I was 8 over going into the final hole of my 9, and I double bogeyed it, which kind of sucked because that would have been a pretty good pace. But whatever, it happens. But it's always fun. Give Crestview a call. They got 2 courses. They had a tournament on one course. Most places that happens, you're kind of screwed. Not at Crestview. They had a tournament on one of the 18. So I jumped over to the other one and played 9 holes. That's I know the golfers love that opportunity, but we appreciate their support of the program. Give them a call. Tommy, for the Royals, I've been One of the great ironies of baseball is nothing can make you angrier than when you're following a good team, because the last couple of nights are just like straight white hot anger as a baseball fan to see the Royals drop the first two in Oakland. This second game was with Cole Reagans on the mound. They're now in third place in the AL Central, now 6 games behind Cleveland. With this tremendous opportunity they had in front of them, now they're just trying to salvage and not be swept by the A's. The infuriating day-to-day grind of meaningful baseball is something that I think is one of the great sports fans' things. It's easy to be indifferent in baseball, but you can only get this angry if the team you're following is in contention. And that's what we have now, because this is maddening to see them drop these first 2 games in Oakland.
You know what Oakland really did in the game last night that set them apart and ultimately led to the win? They worked the count. They worked the count on Cole Reagans. They worked the count on the bullpen. Royals pitchers issued 7 walks to the Athletics last night. That's far too many runners on the base paths. And that was just really kind of the doing in, I think, of Kansas City last night. That's more than double their season average in their games this year. And they do a fairly good job, the pitchers do for the most part, of avoiding walks, but last night was not really the case. So I don't know if there was something that the hitters for Oakland saw in Cole Reagans, in warmups or whatever, like, hey, we need to be a little bit more patient at the plate, or really what it came down to. But they were able to work more favorable counts, get on the base paths more, and I think that ultimately did the Royals in.
Yeah, I mean, it did. There's a lot of things that are doing the Royals in right now, and it's just I don't know even how many of them we need to be like trying to like dissect and evaluate. They're not playing well at this moment, and it's frustrating because they have this opportunity. I mean, do I think this means that the Royals are pretenders and they're, frauds? No, I don't. That's what makes it even more frustrating. I think they're legitimate. You just, you go out to Oakland and you lose a couple of games, and that's baseball. That happens in baseball all the time. And, the overall consistency is what tells the story. But in this small moment, to fall further behind Cleveland, to allow Minnesota to overtake you in the standings, when you hadn't done that through this brutal stretch that they are just coming out of, that's no fun. And it's, again, I don't know what else to say besides maddening. The good news is you get day baseball after it. I will say there's nothing better to cure what ails you after a really frustrating night or a couple of nights or whatever than some day baseball. If you get that turned around, you get it in the afternoon, you feel much better about things. It'd be nice if they could figure out a way to pick up that game back on Cleveland. But then there's the alternative. What if it snowballs and now you're 7 games back? I mean that's and so there's this pressure, and they have to feel that pressure, right? You can't get swept by Oakland. They're terrible. Can't happen.
Yeah, do you think there's more pressure on them this Thursday to avoid a sweep against the A's, or more pressure a week ago Thursday to try to avoid a sweep against the Yankees?
Absolutely this week. No question. Now, I will say, in that Yankees series, they were just getting smashed. So maybe that added a little bit of pressure in that regard, because they were the way that they were losing those games was so, you just were like, God, they're totally outmatched. So maybe that, but there's way more pressure not to get swept by Oakland. I mean, you can't get swept by Oakland. What is this? Like, what's happening right now? It's not a thing that can happen to a good team. Has Oakland, and I'll check this here in just a second. And by the way, it's Seth Lugo today. You like that? I'm gonna check and see if Oakland has swept anybody this year. Let's just take a real quick look and see if they have any sweeps this season. Well, they've been swept plenty of times. I'll say that. Just looking for no. Nope. I don't think that they have. Oh, they swept Pittsburgh. I take that back, Oakland A's fans. You did get a sweep against Pittsburgh. Doesn't change the fact that if you're Kansas City, you cannot allow their second sweep of the season to come against you. Can't do it. I mean, come on now. It's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, Tommy, that we're even having this conversation.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
It's been a while since I brought this up, and I think that I'm ready now to bring it back up again to restart this conversation. I think it's time to move Michael Garcia out of the leadoff spot. I think you've got to put Bobby Witt Jr. in there and move forward with him at the leadoff spot. Did you know Michael Garcia has not had a hit in his last 4 games, dating back to the Dodger series? In fact, in his last 15 games, he's batting a measly 141. He's 9 for 64. The slugging percentage is under 2 for Michael Garcia right now. And really, I mean, even going back to last night, the only offensive production, of course, came from the bat of Bobby Witt Jr. And I just think that they're at the point now where, especially as they're kind of sputtering offensively and it starts at the very top of the lineup, I've been an advocate for it for a while. I backed off of it for a bit because I thought, okay, Garcia's kind of coming around, and I understand Bobby Witt Jr. being comfortable in the second spot and blah, blah, blah. At the point they are right now, and to try to stop the bleeding a little bit, anything you can do, I think, to try to stem that tide will help. And I think that's one thing that they could absolutely look at, and they should be doing. I think they should move Bobby Witt Jr. to the leadoff spot and move Michael Garcia further down.
I agree. It has never changed either. There was never a point where that shouldn't have been the case. You've got 2 major problems at the top of the lineup right now. And it's that Vinny Pasquantino couldn't get a clutch hit if his life depended on it. He is not having a good year. And Michael Garcia doesn't need to be this team's leadoff hitter. Never has. Needs to be Bobby Witt Jr.
Yep.
And I don't know what you do at the 2-hole. I mean, at this point, I'd be fine just batting Salvi in the 2-hole. Like, I don't know what you do because how many times does Pasquantino get up late in the game with an opportunity to do something meaningful and it falls flat? Like, double play ball, pop fly last night. Like, it's constant. So why? Like, this isn't some, earth shattering. You're not hurting anybody's feelings. Like, mix this up a little bit. And I don't know if Massey helps that, and maybe you can move him in. But right now, like you have, I agree.
And look, you go back to the last 4 games the Royals have played. Every single time in the top of the first inning, they've been on the road all 4 games. Bobby Witt Jr. is coming to bat with 1 out. Right? I mean, because Michael Garcia has not had a hit in the last 4 games. He's been the leadoff guy, right? And so I think you have to keep your eye on that and realize that you are not giving your best player the best situation to come to bat. I'd rather him go to bat with nobody on and nobody out than nobody on and 1 out every time in the top of the first inning or the bottom of the first inning. It basically spots the other team in out before the best hitter on your team comes up to the plate. And so I think you've got to kind of look at that. And I was going back and forth with a couple of people on social media last night about this. And somebody said, the Royals tried Bobby Witt Jr. in the leadoff spot last year and it failed. That was their words. It was a very small sample size. He played like 30 some games, I think, when he batted leadoff last year. And he wasn't the player last year that he is now. He was still growing and blossoming, into this superstar, right? And so I think that you've got to, kind of throw that out the window. It was an extremely small sample size. And on top of that, too, wouldn't you want your best hitter to potentially get more at bats? I don't know if you can calculate out on average how many more at bats a leadoff hitter gets as opposed to a 2-hole hitter, but I would imagine that it's at least a few as the season goes on, right? I mean, I don't exactly know that, but you would think you're putting them in better opportunities and better situations.
Well, let me just look here, and because I can tell you how many more Michael Garcia has than Bobby Witt Jr. Let's go to at-bats, and we'll sort, because I don't recall Garcia getting any, days off. It's equated right now to they have about the same number of walks, almost identical. It's equated to 5 more at-bats this season. So not an insignificant number.
Yeah, and, if Bobby Witt Jr. is batting, right around 300, I think. So you're talking, if he had 5 more at-bats, 2 more hits,
Potentially.
You know,
And if they're in a clutch spot, it could be, the outcome of a game, 2 games, which is meaningful. No, I agree with you. I'm not like right now it's getting bad. Like if you go to OPS, like if you're a stats guy, I mean, Michael Garcia is like 8th on the team in OPS. Not only is it just bad, like it's bad compared to his peers in the same lineup. It's not good. He does not need to be leading off. It doesn't make any sense. It's not conducive to his style of play. I mean, he can steal bases. He has the second most, I think, on the team, but he's not on base enough. His on base percentage is one of the lower numbers on the team. Again, in the starting lineup, I think it's 9th or 10th in on base percentage. So, like, it doesn't make any sense to me. I'm not saying he's not useful. He's certainly useful. But why would you, A, not give Bobby Witt Jr. the extra at bats? B, if base stealing is a major part of his game, and it is, even, potentially, you've got somebody out in front of him. If he can get on as a leadoff man, he's going to steal second. And now you just need Salvi up and with an opportunity to knock him in. Like, I think when Massey comes back, I would probably go Witt, Massey, Salvi. I might even go Witt, Salvi, Massey. They've got to put a collection of players together that are just, a little more consistent. We've talked about this. Like the lineup is scoring runs and it is finding, different ways. And there's a clutch factor to this lineup. Certainly. There's no question. They're scoring a lot of runs late. Maybe score a few more early. And sometimes you can help manufacture that a little bit. You put a handy hitter at 2. You got Bobby Witt leading off. He's going to steal second.
This is the same guy a few games ago that hit a ball down the left field line. He's a right-handed batter and got a triple out of it.
I know. But even let's just say he gets on because he's getting on base at a good clip. And you've got somebody batting 2-hole and you're playing you're up against a really good pitcher. And Witt finds his way on. Steal second, and bunt him over to third and take your chances on Salvi getting you a sac fly. Don't you like those chances? Like, I know the analytics people don't like that, but the Royals are not this dynamic, there's just, to your point, there is no reason that the lineup needs to be so hard and fast, and Michael Garcia he has not needed to be leading off all year. Like that, the conversation didn't change that we were having 3 weeks ago. It's the same thing. Literally try anybody else. Mm-hmm. He's one of the worst players on the team at getting on base. What do you need your leadoff hitter to do?
Get on base. And on top of that too, like I mentioned before, I know it's one at bat at the very beginning of the game. And then at that point, the situation is always different. But at least to start off a game for the last 4 of them, it's an automatic out before Bobby Witt Jr. comes to the plate. You think that changes the way a pitcher might approach Bobby Witt Jr. if you're pitching to him with 1 out as opposed to pitching to him with no outs? Because I think it does a little bit. I think you got to be a little bit more cautious. And so if you've not got anybody in front of him that the pitchers have any kind of respect for, and at least over the last couple of weeks, I don't know why any pitcher would fear Michael Garcia, then you can absolutely go right at him. And then you don't have to worry about him getting on base and for Bobby Witt Jr. to drive him in. And, the other, I think on top of it too, and I know we're talking collectively as a team, and I'm looking more at this from an individual stats perspective. How many more RBIs would Bobby Witt Jr. have this season if he had somebody that was consistently getting on base in front of him in the lineup? And that's not happening. And I know oftentimes leadoff hitters don't have a lot of RBIs because midway through a game, they're coming up after the 9-hole hitter or whatever. But still, I think that you would see quite a bit more production from Bobby Witt Jr., at least from a stat perspective, if he was batting leadoff.
And he hadn't had a good week either at the plate, but
he was the only offensive production in last night's game.
How about this? Bobby Witt Jr. leads off. Pasquantino doesn't strike out, so he's at least helpful in a 2-hole if Witt's on. Witt, Pasquantino, Salvi, 1, 2, 3. And then you can figure out how you want to mix up Garcia. and like Nelson Velasquez or Renfroe when he's back, at kind of in that 4-5 area, and then you start over again with Massey at 6, and then just sort of see what happens. I think if you can go Whit, Pasquantino, Salvi, 1, 2, 3, you're going to be a more productive offense. I do. It fits all their styles to go in that order. Vinny Pasquantino is not been a power hitter at all this year. I mean, he's got 7 home runs. It's fine. He's slugging .422. I think if you put him at 2, you're not missing a ton, right? I think you could absolutely do that. He doesn't strike out. That's his strength, right? He does not strike out. So put him in there, and if Witt's on base, that almost anything is productive when Witt's on base. Almost anything. Because if Witt's on base, he's probably going to steal second. And then if he steals second, you're productive here. Let's go to the KFH hotline. We'll extend the segment here a little bit so Mike doesn't have to wait through the commercial break. Welcome in, Mike. IHOP hotline.
Hey.
The floor is yours.
Okay, well, I just have a couple of comments. I think this team is going to be a streaky team, streaky good, streaky bad, just based on what I've seen. I think I'm hoping after the All-Star break we're going to see a little bit of a movement in not only the batting lineup, but boy, I'd sure like to see some other people in left field. I just, Darren Blanco, the guy, is just not getting much of a chance. And, he's a pretty talented guy, really fast. Maybe he's that leadoff guy, or maybe, he needs to be in there somewhere. And then also, I think when Renfroe and Massey get back, I think that lineup is going to get back into shape, and we're going to see some more on the offensive side. That's all I got.
I think, look, Mike, I think those are good points. I would say just bat Witt leadoff, though. Like, let Witt be your leadoff hitter. And I've always kind of wanted to see more of Blanco. If you've listened to this show, you know that. Like, I'm kind of in on Blanco. He's a wild card a little bit. Getting Renfroe and Massey back is going to help. I don't think there's much question about that. So that extends your lineup just a little bit. But mix it up. Like, why are we so beholden to this lineup? I don't understand.
Yeah, it's been a little surprising to me that with Renfroe on the IL, that they haven't given Blanco more play. And I know that they've done, a couple of other things. They called up Drew Waters for a quick cup of coffee, and Kyle Isbell's getting quite a bit more play. Of course, MJ Melendez is in there. I'm surprised that Blanco. That would have been the opportunity, I think, to see what you had really in Darren Blanco.
Isbell's been a good enough defender that when the offense is healthy, I'm okay with him in center. I just can't have that many holes in the lineup, though, because he does, man. He plays a mean center field. 869-1240. We'll continue the conversation, get into tonight's matchup specifically as we make our way through. Lots of other stuff to come today as well. We'll get into it. It's Albracht and Castor at Sports Daily on a Thursday.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite, or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say, drink tea, be happy. have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor alongside you. Thanks for tuning in to the program. By the way, don't miss a minute of the action on the diamond with ESPN Bet. The exclusive sportsbook of ESPN is the only place to find offers and promotions from your favorite ESPN shows and personalities, including daily odds boosts and home run specials all season long. New users can get a bet reset up to $1,000 in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Download ESPN Bet today. What a play. Must be 21 plus. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In partnership with Hollywood Casino at Kansas Speedway. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details. All right, Tommy, it's a Lugo day. Lugo has been certainly lately not what he was in the beginning, but right now as the Royals get day baseball, you're minus 145 on the money line. That spread line is plus 105. He's up against Mitch Spence. That over-under still at 7.5. If we're looking at the Royals, what are we thinking here? ESPN Bet. I would say, Tommy, that I would go right back to the run line. Well, like at some point, they have to do what they're supposed to do in this series. I mean, maybe they don't. But if I'm just looking at it on logical plays, that would be the play.
Well, and there's nobody that you would rather have on the hill, even though it hasn't been particularly great recently. I mean, he hasn't really pitched at the level that we have become accustomed to. Then Seth Lugo. You want Seth Lugo in this spot to try to salvage the series against the A's. You cannot get, number one, get swept by them, and especially get swept by them when Seth Lugo is pitching. So he's got to pitch a good game. We've got to get back to, I guess, vintage Seth Lugo from earlier this season. And offense has to sort of click into place. I thought they would score a lot more runs last night against Medina than what they did. Medina's ERA is pretty high. And that was the first win of the season for him last night. So I thought they would definitely have more going offensively last night. You've got to get the bats going today. And so if they're able to do that, then yeah, I mean, I like the fact that it is Lugo. So if it was anybody else, I'm not sure that I would lay that money. But because it is Lugo, I think I might do that.
I don't bet enough to ever bet minus 145 by itself. So like my bet amount typically isn't high enough to make that worth it. Now, if I'm looking at putting that with something else, then you could maybe convince me. And let's look at some of the player props on it here, because baseball player props are tricky. Lugo over 5.5 strikeouts. You put that with, just a money line, maybe. I don't think a home run is what you want to put in there. That's more of a by itself sort of bet. You could put Bobby Witt Jr. With, let me just see what this does to the odds. So his one hit is minus 450, so it's not good at all. Let me see what that does to that money line if I put them together. It makes it minus 113. That's a little more appealing. You just kind of toss in a Bobby Witt Jr. hit, even though it's not juicy at all. Like it's minus 450. It does get you closer to even money if you were going to go that way. I just don't like minus 145 because I don't bet enough. And so when I look at him, I'm like, okay, well, where's that opportunity to get at least close to even money? And that's what, that's where that would go. Mitch Spence, I mean, we can look him up. I don't know a lot about Mitch Spence, Tommy.
Well, it's his seventh start of the season. He has kind of bounced back and forth between the rotation and the bullpen. He's had 11 relief appearances, an ERA under 4. He's got a whip that's slightly higher than it probably should be at 121. So it's been kind of up and down, I think, for him, depending on whether or not he's starting a game or coming out of the bullpen. The last time he was out against the Twins in a start, it was a no decision. He pitched 5 2/3, gave up 4 runs and 9 hits. And so it wasn't a great outing for him less than a week ago. So that being said, over his last 6 starts, an ERA under 4, 3.69 is his ERA over his last 6 starts. So not horrible. I would imagine he's kind of a middle of the road, up and down, kind of pitcher.
But it's more about the Royals offense, isn't it?
Well, 100% it is. And you know what?
Can they just do what they need to do?
Yeah, look, and I looked this stat up. I saw this earlier today. Away from Kauffman Stadium this season, the Royals offense has an OPS of 649, which is below the league average. The league average is right around 7. And so they've been away from home pretty woeful offensively throughout the entire season. And so that they've got to try to buck that trend in today's game, and get going, I think, early. To your point, we've talked about how clutch this team can be in late innings and how they don't go away. But the byproduct of that is that they're not scoring the runs that they need to be out in front early in games often enough. And so that's going to be something that we'll need to continue to develop. And especially today, we've both seen in the previous 2 games, the Royals falling behind and not being able to come back. And especially in the opening game of this series, they did come back, but not all the way, and they lost 7-5. So you've got to get out to a lead early. You've got to try to run Mitch Spence early and get to the bullpen for Oakland, which is better, but still, I think that's got to be the strategy for today.
It does. Well, you just give yourself a chance, right? They haven't really given themselves a chance. And that's a combination of things. You've been let down by your starters in those games too, right? It's been both. It's not all on the offense. The first game of the series, they scored 5 runs. That ought to be enough against Oakland. Last night, not so much. Last night was just sort of a turd. There's no other way around it. It was just kind of an all-around turd. Today, Lugo on the mound, stop the bleeding. Never thought we'd be having a conversation about needing to stop the bleeding in a series against Oakland, but that's the way that goes. So I am not sure that I will bet them again until we see them come out of whatever this funk is. Tommy, when we look at the offense lately, 1 run, 5 runs, no runs. They had 7, then they had 3, 4, 5, 1, 2. It's just, you look at it on paper and I'll bet you if we took from the start of that Yankees series to the end of Oakland over that stretch of games, which would be now 8 games over their last 8, I'll bet you if we took the amount of runs scored in their last 8 games, it's not the bottom of the league. You know what I mean? Like so the law of averages with this team would go where they always have, like the run differential's high, all these things. And it's really hard to define it, but when they're struggling, and maybe it's to Mike, our caller in the last segment's point, maybe it's just a streaky team. And you know what? A streaky team won the World Series last year. So that's not the worst thing in the world. You just have to have timing with that and have your streaks run together. But remember, the Rangers last year, they couldn't get it done in the division. The famous Astros, we all wondered what it would be like if the Astros didn't win the division. Guess we won't find out. That whole thing. And the Rangers streaked at the right time. They got hot in the postseason. They hit 1 billion home runs, and they won a World Series. So if that is what this team is, it's fine that they go cold like this, as long as they continue to go hot. And it's got to be extended stretches of hot. And the timing has to be there. Like if they lose 2-3 games to the Indians right here because they're in the cold streak, if they turn around the hot streak and they go back and they take 3 or 4 from Cleveland, then we're all fine, right? Like everybody's good. Nobody's disappointed. So maybe that's it. Maybe it's just a streaky team because the numbers sort of tell you that it is. The averages look fine, but you get into these stretches where you just scratch your head a little bit of what is happening right now?
Yeah, I get that. And this is really the opportunity, I think, for the Royals to show that, they are in a position where they're still looking at winning this division, or at least trying to chase down the Guardians. If they get swept in this series, then you go on to Texas and you struggle there as the road trip continues. I remember, I think we talked about it a week ago, or maybe even earlier this week, about how this stretch of baseball, will end up telling us all we need to know about them. And if they falter, if they continue to sputter, then we are probably looking at more of a wild card potential team, maybe a first round exit, a wild card exit type, team, as opposed to a legitimate contender.
It is. I am not quite ready to, but I'm close to saying just worry about the wild card. Minnesota also just passed you in the standings. I think inherently one of Houston or Texas is going to heat up before this season is done. I think there's just too much traffic. Cleveland is still attainable. You have too many heads-up games against them. I think for us to rewire our brains, I guess but we're close. And again, if Cleveland runs away with it, okay, fine, who cares? Right? Then the wild card's fine, but you still got to be in the wild card. But I think you still think about Cleveland because probably at worst, Cleveland's going to be one of those teams you're competing with in the wild card. Like if Minnesota gets hot, you still got to be, potentially better than Cleveland. We think they're taking 2 wild card teams out of the AL Central. I mean, look, I know there are 2 wild card teams right now. If you looked in the standings of the AL Central, what do we honestly think the chances of 3 teams out of the AL Central making the playoffs are? Like, what would you put that chance at on June 20th?
I'm at a loss. I mean, I just don't know.
Low.
Yeah.
It's got to be low.
It's got to be. I want to be optimistic.
I
want to be optimistic. It's hard to be that way right now.
Let's look at that. We'll come back. We'll continue this, and we'll get into K-State and some other things in the second hour. But we'll come back to that. Like, if you took the standings now, you'd have 3 in from the Central. What are the chances that holds up, and how does that impact how much of a frustration you might have this week after losing a couple games in Oakland if you're the Royals? We'll come back. More Sports Daily right after this.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, let's do our first giveaway. Your chance to win some HTO iced tea and free reign coffee. You can get more than 20 flavors of that iced tea. Wichita East, Wichita West, and in Derby. All you got to do to win is text to win. You can enter the contest by texting the keyword TEA to the short code 20357. That's it. You can enter once per day. Message and data rates apply. Just text the word TEA to 20357. We'll give away some concert tickets. Kenny Chesney, Zach Brown Band coming up in the second hour. All right, Tommy, we put this out there. What are the chances as we look at the wild card right now, and you'd have two central teams, three teams in the playoffs, basically from the AL Central, that would hold true? Here's what I would tell you. If you go to CBS Sports, and they have this service, this projecting like AI service thing. They've always had it. So they would put the chances of Cleveland in the playoffs at 97% right now. Minnesota in the playoffs at 78% right now. And the Royals a tick under 20%. So they obviously don't believe in the Royals. But it would be close by their projections for that to hold true. I would tell you I will be stunned if three teams out of the AL Central end up in the postseason. I know that's the way it's been all year long. I know that's the way it is now. That just will really, really surprise me if that holds true.
Well, then who are the other teams, you think that would maybe knock out that third team from the, in the AL Central to get a wild card spot? Is it an AL East team potentially? Like, are we looking at, one of those teams to try to get hot down the stretch and ultimately knock out whoever that third place team is?
Well, the Red Sox are the most in striking distance. And the Red Sox, quite frankly, aren't even the team that scares me the most, although with their budgets, they could get crazy at the deadline. But if you're, there is a combination of Tampa, Toronto, Houston, Texas, and then Boston that gets really scary if they get hot and if they get healthy. The law of averages play out to what we projected for these teams before the season started. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe this just continues on this trend and the AL is not as strong as we thought it was. I just think that that's hard to imagine that we hold this with the division that has historically not been as good. Maybe it does. Maybe it does. But right now, Boston's right there, and you got to be worried about that. Kansas City's another bad day from being knocked out of the postseason as it currently stands. And then you have that group of those 4 other teams that you've got to hold off. I don't think Detroit's going to be able to keep the pace with Kansas City, but they're not bad. They don't scare me the same way Tampa, Toronto, Houston, and Texas do. So I don't know. You tell me. I'd say the chances are low. If there was a way to bet right now how many teams from the AL Central make the postseason and the number was at 2.5, I would take the under.
I'm gonna go a little higher than that, and the reason I think that the probability might be slightly higher is, as we all know, there aren't as many divisional games in Major League Baseball anymore. So where it used to be the teams would just cannibalize each other, that necessarily isn't always the case anymore because these teams are not playing as many games against each other as they used to. So I think that might play into it a little bit. Here's the other thing too. I think that a week from now, we'll have a pretty good idea if the Royals are going to be chasing Cleveland or if they're going to be chasing Minnesota. Because, you lose today and then you struggle against Texas this weekend, and then you play the Guardians at home. And a week from now, when that Guardian series is all wrapped up and done, I think we'll know, are they going to be able to get after the Guardians for the division, or should they set their sights on trying to overtake Minnesota and at least solidify a wild card position?
I don't even know what you want either, by the way, because you've played Minnesota quite a bit this year already, right? So would you rather be chasing the team you play directly? Probably you'd rather just be chasing the team that's not as good. And I'm not sure who I think is better, Minnesota or Cleveland. And throw Kansas City in there too. And that's so crazy about this week, Tommy. Like if Kansas City is what they should be, right? If their pitchers are the good versions of themselves, I think that I honestly, I would take them right there with Minnesota or Cleveland. I would. I mean, if Waka comes back healthy and your pitchers are doing what they've done for most of the season collectively, I would still take that because I think they have the better rotation. But when they're cold like this, they don't feel like, and I know this sounds obvious, but I do think it's not always the case. Their floor and their ceiling seem like they're very far apart.
Well, the team that they're putting out on the field right now is not the best version of themselves. Without Michael Wacha, without Michael Massey, without Hunter Renfroe, by and large, up until the last couple of weeks, they had pretty much avoided the injury bug for the most part. It's hit them really hard. And what's interesting is that they managed their way through the most difficult stretch of baseball. And here we go against the Athletics, where they've got to just try to scramble to avoid a sweep.
It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Don't play down to your opponents.
I know. I don't even know if that's what it is. I just the wrong timing for a cold streak. I don't know. We'll talk about it on the other side. Just got word from Fitz. His colleague Ryan Gilbert is going to join us in his place. He's a little under the weather. Maybe could not be better timing for that because he is the Go Power Cat basketball expert, and we have a lot of basketball that we need to talk about with Ryan Gilbert, so we'll do that next. How does this all fit together, and what's the real story on this recruitment of Coleman Hawkins in potentially the largest NIL deal ever given? We'll get into all of that on the other side. Stick with us. More Sports Daily coming right up.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
From Wichita's most listened to sports radio, 97.5 and 1240 KFH. This is Sports Daily with Jacob Albracht and Tommy Castor.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. It is Sports Daily. It is hour number 2. I'm Jacob Albracht here, getting you ready for hour number 2. We've got a giveaway, Kenny Chesney tickets. Zach Brown Band opening up at Arrowhead Stadium. We'll give you the details on how you could win that. We will have the IHOP hotline occupied, but it is brought to you by IHOP. You can try the new 2x2x2. 2 eggs your way, 2 bacon strips, 2 pork sausage links, 2 buttermilk pancakes, $7. IHOP bringing you the hotline, 869-1240, which will open back up after this segment because we're joined now, filling in for Tim Fitzgerald, our K-State insider, his colleague there at GoPowerCat.com, Ryan Gilbert. You can follow Ryan's work on Twitter, on X, at GPC Ryan G. Ryan, welcome back in. How are you, man?
Good. How you guys doing this morning? Appreciate you having me on.
Doing well. Yeah, no problem. We appreciate you being here. You're sort of the basketball expert, so the timing on this is great. I got to know the real story here. Coleman Hawkins is added. K-State makes it official. The quotes are out there now from the coaching staff. It's all out there. It's late in the game, but we got reporting from an NBA reporter, which is really interesting because, you know, they're usually contacted by representatives we know, that this is believed to be perhaps the biggest NIL deal ever. Is that true? What's the story there? And B, do you find it interesting at all that you've got now NBA reporters who are contacted generally by agents for a lot of their stuff, reporting on college basketball recruiting moves?
Well, who would have thought that NBA reporters would ever be, talking about Kansas State University, let alone any college program? But no, to answer your question, I'm not sure. I haven't been able to really confirm it. I'm not sure if anybody here at Go Power Cat has confirmed it, but, a lot of multiple, outlets have said that $2 million is real, or at least near that ballpark. And so, Drum Tang was strategic with his money throughout this offseason. I think he knew that there was going to be a guy or a group of guys that come out of that NBA draft process rather later, right? And so K-State missed out on some guys early on. Fans were frustrated. And, I think Tang was being smart, kind of saving up that NIL money for later on when a guy like Coleman Hawkins would become available and, get him to Manhattan, lock down his commitment. And so, goes without saying, this is such a big time pickup for Kansas State. Anybody that knows anything about Hawkins, right? You've been on social media, you've seen that this is going to be an impact player, certainly a guy that's going to start for Kansas State. And they've got obviously a plethora of newcomers from the transfer portal, only returning 3 guys from last season. You add in David Castillo, who's played out in Wichita at Sunrise last season. So only 4 guys that were really part of the plan after last season really are going to be on next year's roster. And so it's going to be a bunch of newcomers. And so Coleman Hawkins, I think, is just with that NIL money that's going to be attached to his name, is probably going to be the face of that program. Now, there's obviously maybe a debate. Is anybody worth $2 million? I think the answer is no, but you got to do what you got to do to get your players that you want to come to your program. And Drum Tang has sort of accepted and embraced this new NIL world.
Not our money, right? I don't know what a player's worth out there. The open market generally tells us those things. Do you think this was, you said Coach Tang was strategic. You think this was use it or lose it kind of a deal? I can't imagine that when the offseason started, they identified Coleman Hawkins as the guy they wanted to reset records for. It feels like he was the best available and they had the funds at the time.
Yep, that's a good point. The NIL stuff, I think it's interesting to look at just how a locker room can maybe react. If I'm, let's be honest, guys, if I'm any other player here on K-State's roster, I'm not going to be overly joyed that some, one of my teammates is getting $2 million when I'm only getting, I don't know, a couple $100,000 or however much that may be. And so I know that was looked at with Memphis last season with Naquan Tomlin coming in mid-season and, a guy that comes into your locker room and, guys know this, they're on social media, they see these numbers. And so I don't know if it was a use it or lose it type deal, but it certainly, Drum Tang knew that this money was there, right? And so why not go out and use it? I'm not sure, though. The real question here, I don't know the real answer to this, but the real question is, okay, if Coleman Hawkins, if they don't get anybody really to commit, and if they don't get a big-time player to commit, does that give the rest of the roster a boost in NIL, or is that money just kind of kept in the donor's pocket, so to speak? So I'm not sure the real answer there, but it's a good point you bring up.
And I think too, like the concern, because this was like when NIL first started, I think there was a major concern, probably more in football, but maybe to some degree in basketball about the guys in the locker room where others are earning more than others. But we don't ever have that concern, right, with pro sports. So like, do you think, people are jealous that Patrick Mahomes is making all that money in a Chiefs locker room? Or you think any of the Celtics were jealous that they had 2 max players, but, maybe they felt like they were just as impactful? I think locker rooms sort that stuff out because we don't usually see that as an issue. You might have a player like mad at the team, but I don't think any of the players get mad at each other for that kind of stuff. They sort of feel united. I don't know because I haven't asked the question to any of these guys. I've never asked them that question, but I do think that they probably are more okay with it than we were initially concerned with when this all started a few years ago.
Sure. And you look at pro sports, right? Like it is a job, and the way that things are trending, obviously they're students, right? Student athletes at the end of the day, they're students, but this money here is real. And until the NCAA kind of steps in and maybe puts an end to this whole stuff that's going on, it's not much different than just being a professional athlete, right? So I know Fitz has talked about the analogy. I'm sure he's mentioned it with you guys that you got to go a little bit over the speed limit and do what you can do without getting pulled over, so to speak. And Drum Tang is certainly doing that with his NIL money.
Yeah, K-State has been at the forefront of this from literally day one. with NIL, putting out the, the collective and all that kind of stuff. Ryan Gilbert joining us, GoPowerCat.com, filling in for Fitz, our K-State insider. Perfect timing. A lot of basketball news to get to. Coleman Hawkins, sort of that last piece. I don't know how you feel about it, Ryan. And most teams are replacing a ton. KU across the street is not. Most of the other teams in the Big 12 are. So as I look at it, I think this is clearly, as June 20th go, the best group that Jerome Tang has had. Am I over optimistic to say this is like a top 4 team in the Big 12 or better? Because it feels that way to me, just based on what we've seen Jerome Tang do with less on the roster on paper.
It depends really how the rest of the Big 12 might shape up, because that league it's always going to be tough. It's going to be brutal some years. And so I think K-State, if all goes right, then I can certainly see this team maybe flirting for the conference. But I mean, you look at KU and Houston, Iowa State, Baylor. There are some really, Arizona, there's some really good programs, some good teams for next year in this conference. And so it goes without saying, you want to stay healthy, right? You want to have, you go back to last year, man, the whole Naquan Tomlin stuff, that just kind of set the stage for a somewhat disastrous year for the program. And so you've got to have some cards be dealt your way. Kansas State did not have that last year, obviously, but today's June 20th, like you mentioned, and you go back to the first off season with Jerome Tang. Okay, Keontae Johnson wasn't committed until August, right? And so K-State's roster right now certainly looks better this year than it did at that point in his first year. And then you go back to last year, Tyler Perry, Arthur Kaluma, those were some guys that they got in the portal, and there was some rightfully so, there were some buzz about those players, but to be blunt, man, they don't match the level of a guy like Coleman Hawkins, a guy like Doug McDaniel, even a Chor. These guys are even maybe people that are viewed more as a role player, so to speak, behind these big time guys from power conferences. K-State's a deep roster. They're athletic. They're lengthy. A lot of versatile players are on the roster, and so I think K-State's biggest thing is probably presenting some matchup issues to other Big 12 teams, right? K-State's got a lot of different players that can do a lot of different things. Coleman Hawkins, for example, is 6'10", but he plays like a guard. He's capable of going in the paint, posting up, doing some of those things near the basket, but he can shoot it. He's quick. He can get by defenders. He loves to run up and down the court. And so you can go down the entire roster. Most of the players on this team are versatile players that are capable of doing a lot of different, types of things for this team.
Well, and versatile is a good word. It all seems to fit. Brendan Housen, so he's from the same town I grew up in. So I've heard a lot about him for a long time in Amarillo. Mm-hmm. Well, not just then, in which people pretty universally, anybody you talk to says best shooter they've ever seen, even into the college ranks. I know that's what Villanova had said at one point. I've talked to other people from other places that, everybody's connected on the AAU scenes and everything that sort of agree. One of the best shooters they've ever seen. If he finds that at K-State, you've got point guards there, you've got other shooters. Like, it all just seems like it's going to fit, right? And personalities we may not know, but stylistically, it seems like a far more complete roster than what even when Keontae Johnson came in, we didn't know that, Marquise Noel was going to play the way he played. And I wouldn't even say that was a complete roster. That was just two dudes that could ball. Now you've got what looks to be a more, intentional mix of players, I guess, and what their styles do and how that could collectively work together.
Yeah, we talked about this kind of on our questions podcast that went live today. Fitz mentioned how Doug McDaniel, if his stats go down, right, that's probably a good thing compared to what he did last year at Michigan. Just because he's on a better team isn't necessarily being asked to score a whole lot, right? So, you talk about Noel and Johnson, those were the two superstars from that team in Tang's first season. And the rest were kind of just role players here and there that pitched in. That seems like this roster, was much more intentional with Tang in the portal, like you said. So to get guys that, specific defined roles, like even a guy like Ugonna Onyenso, he's not a scorer. He's absolutely not a scorer, but he's a very good rim protector. He can block some shots, a good defender. And so K-State, if they want to go with him at the 5 spot, absolutely. But David Gasson is capable of playing at the 5 as well. Maybe not as strong of a defender, right? But he can go in and score. He mismatch issues for opponents, right? Gasson can kind of blow by guys, step back, fade away. He's a versatile player again. And so there's different types of, it depends what the opponents kind of present to you, right? But you go back, we talked about Hausen, right? Being such a good 3-point shooter. You go back to last year, I think Arthur Kaluma was K-State's top 3-point percentage player at like 34%, I believe. And I'd have to go and do the numbers again. But I think 4 or 5 of K-State's additions from the portal, including Hausen, surpassed that number. So K-State had a number of issues last season. Turnovers were probably at the top of that list, but K-State was not a good 3-point shooting team. K-State got a number of players that would be the best, on last year's team if they were in a purple uniform. And so K-State kind of addressed the issues from last season. 3-point shooting, they've got some guys to obviously knock down some shots. And then obviously the turnover issues, right? Doug McDaniel thinks going to be a real good point guard for this offense. David Castillo's capable of handling the ball. A lot of different players also have good vision, right? Now, you don't have to be a point guard, but still having good vision, making good passes is going to eliminate turnovers and get you better looks at the basket.
Yeah, I think it's going to work. And just to, go into, going over to 24/7, go PowerCat. I'm looking at the rankings of just compared to the Big 12 of this class, and it has Kansas State 7th. I find that hard to believe. However, even if it is, it just seems like it's such a good fit of players. That's where my optimism, I think, comes from. There have been a lot of teams in the league that have put together good classes, but I think this K-State one has the potential to really stylistically blend itself very well. And Jerome Tang gets an opportunity now with the best roster he's had. If he just does if he just does his thing, I think that's where the optimism comes. We'll see. I can't wait for the Big 12. I see a little bit of what you have coming. What about next year? Is the momentum still there for, some of the high school players? We saw the high school class we were excited about a couple of years ago. They're kind of all gone now, and now it's the David Castillo era. But is Tang and staff still where they need to be, you think, at the high school ranks?
Ideally, you'd like to have more than one incoming freshman. I don't think anybody could disagree with that. But Jerome Tang wants to go after big-time dudes, right? I think they kind of want to put their eggs in a couple of baskets, right? They're not going to, they're going to single in on just a handful of players. You go back to last offseason, or Patrick Gongbo was a big-time recruit they wanted to get, and they put a lot of time and effort into him. They put a lot of time and effort into David Castillo, right? Castillo commits, Gongba goes to Duke. You're going to miss out on some. That's part of recruiting. But, I don't know if they're necessarily going to be casting with a broad net. They're identifying the guys that they want, and I think they're going to single in on those guys. And so the opportunity is there, though. I mean, the roster right now has 4 seniors, 4 juniors, 4 sophomores, and just that one freshman with Castillo. And so the opportunity is there to kind of fix this roster, so to speak, and not have to rely on the portal every year. Now, you can obviously, you're going to have to go out and get some experienced dudes from the portal. That's part of it. But not only getting some freshmen to come into the program, but also just getting a guy that is going to be a sophomore from the portal that didn't pan out. Look at a guy like RJ Jones or a Day-Day Ames. That can be a reciprocal thing with the portal. You lose some younger guys, okay, get some younger guys like that maybe aren't as happy at their prior school, get them to come in. They don't maybe have to be immediate impact players, but you can sort of get back to the old way of having younger guys come up through your program and learn your ways. And so by the time that they're older, they can be a prominent player for your team.
I think as long as they got, that kind of NIL money to pass out, they'll be just fine. All right, Ryan, what do you guys have going right now at GoPowerCat.com for us?
lot of different stuff, man. The podcast, like I mentioned, our questions podcast just went up this morning, and so that's always a fun listen to or watch or listen. Right, it's on YouTube, but a lot of fun stuff going on. Lincoln Cure's coming up, his visit this weekend, and so I'm sure a lot of football, football stuff there with his visit. I know K-State feels comfortable with where they are with Lincoln Cure, but we'll have to see where things stand after the visit.
Well, for folks that don't know who Lincoln Cure is, he might be the top high school recruit in the history of Kansas out in Goodland. And it looks like KU and K-State might be his top choices, which is going to be a blast to follow this season. All right, Ryan, we appreciate it. Thanks for hopping in with us today. You can follow Ryan's work on X at GPC Ryan G. Of course, you can find it at gopowercat.com, and we'll see where this thing lands. But it could be a pretty special year for K-State hoops, the way this has come together. We appreciate you hopping on Sports Daily.
Thank you, Jacob.
There goes Ryan Gilbert. Always appreciate those visits. It's always good to get the beats on there and a real up close look at basketball. I don't know where they're going to be picked. I don't think they'll be picked inside the top 4, but I'm kind of feeling a top 4 in the Big 12 kind of year for K-State hoops. I think I think it could be a pretty special year for them. I really like the way this collection seems to fit. Again, it's hard to predict personality. It's hard to predict that kind of stuff, but that's where Jerome Tang steps in. And you just don't foresee that being much of a problem with him, right? You feel like that part of it will be taken care of. 869-1240, what do you think out there? Where would you pick them if you were picking these things? Let's set up our text giveaway for this hour. Should be pretty fun. Here we go. Your chance to win a pair of tickets to see Kenny Chesney live at Arrowhead in Kansas City. Just text the word Kenny, Kenny, to the number 20357. 1 entry per day. Message and data rates apply. Winners will be chosen randomly on June 21st. That's tomorrow at 6:01 p.m. The Zach Brown Band's opening for Kenny Chesney July 6th in Kansas City at Arrowhead. Just text the word Kenny to the number 20357. Message and data rates apply. Good luck, everybody. We'll come back. Tommy will rejoin us. We'll be back for more Sports Daily right on the other side.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
Your comments, you can do that on that hotline. You can do that on our video stream as well by following KFH on Facebook, on YouTube, or X, and then our stream is right there. We still call it retweeted that out on X. You can find that. We've talked a lot about the Royals today and what is happening here. We don't like it. We certainly don't like it, but we've got that conversation going. It has been a very frustrating opening to the Oakland series, certainly. We appreciate Ryan Gilbert for hopping on from Go PowerCat. If you missed anything from our conversation with Ryan Gilbert on Coleman Hawkins, this K-State basketball class overall, you can go back on KFHradio.com to go to the stream or the Odyssey app and listen to that. You can also always go back and watch the video streams as well. A lot of good stuff. We're making our way to it. The big thing for us here today is this Royals series, so we can get into that. I do think it's interesting, though. Back real quick to the K-State Coleman Hawkins $2 million thing being reported by NBA people, which I think tells us there is probably a growing representation piece to this. I don't think you see NBA reporters needing to get involved in this unless they're being given the information by agents who are, wanting the information to go out there. Hey, here's the deal. We did the deal. Like, we need you to put that in the reporting there. We just can mention us because now we can go to the next player and say, hey, look at this deal we got. And, that's an interesting thing that we haven't seen a lot of in the NIL world. So I'll bet you we start to see more of that, by the way. You sort of rip that Band-Aid off and they're going to be competing for players just like they do in the pros, which I think is probably okay. There need to be a few more guidelines. The schools, I would hope, have some ability to make sure kids aren't being taken advantage of. But K-State being that sort of player in basketball is really, really interesting to me. And it highlights again, and I tie it back to, to Wichita State a little bit. K-State's able to generate that and all the NIL they have to generate for football. We've seen KU, obviously everything they've been able to do with hoops. That's no surprise, but they're now winning a lot of recruiting wars for players that maybe they wouldn't have in the past. I just think if you've got these major programs making all that noise across multiple sports and doing all these things, that eventually, and hopefully sooner rather than later, we could see Wichita State. We should see Wichita State re-enter, because it's only hoops. It's only hoops for the Shockers. And in the glory days, you would have seen Wichita State basketball recently, probably outdraw K-State in attendance. So I see that kind of stuff, and it just makes me hopeful that if all goes well, Wichita State could get back into that. And if they can, there's no reason they can't be competing with Memphis, with K-State, with anybody for some of these recruits. Because if it's going, that's sort of, if it's going right, we know the buzz can be there for Wichita State basketball. I mean, we're seeing it, I think in some of the, non-huge revenue generating sports. We've seen buzz with softball, I think a little bit with baseball, but men's and women's basketball, I think a lot of room to grow. And certainly we hope that they're able to do that. K-State, talking to Ryan about this at the end there. You go to 24/7 right now. And K-State, that class that I love, this class. And again, there's 16 teams in the Big 12 right now. So this isn't a knock necessarily. But K-State right now, according to the ranking sites, 7th best class in the Big 12. I find that so hard to believe that group that they've been able to put together sits there. Let me look at just the transfers. If you go to, just the transfer piece in the Big 12, because they didn't have a lot of high school players, that's where you get the difference. Now you're looking at 3rd best, right? Just behind KU and West Virginia. Baylor, their class put together, a lot of the strength comes through freshmen. Same with Arizona State and BYU, who are up there. So I think that can be a little deceiving. And I don't know how high school players factor into this long term. I think that the chances to go and be a long-term player somewhere are getting harder, because it's harder to land at the big schools and play if you're in an elite high school player in basketball. And so I almost think you're going to see the high school talent is what will trickle down to some degree. And then you'll have those players likely graduate on to some of these other places. But either way, I mean, the dust settles there. K-State has the 3rd best transfer class, according to the, to the ranking sites in the Big 12. How do you balance that out with overall class, right? In which they are way down the list in overall class, down to all the way to 7, because you've got talented freshmen coming into some of these places. That's part of the reason why I'm so bullish on K-State. They're experienced players coming in are just about as good a collective experienced group. Not the freshmen, but the freshmen are having less of an impact these days. That's why I think K-State's, upside. I think they could be a top 4 Big 12 team this year. Let's go to the IHOP hotline here. Anthony on the line wants to join in. Anthony, what's up?
I'm glad you're talking about this subject, especially when you're talking about recruiting. And I posed the question, I don't know if I got around to answering it the other day, because there was another young man who, I'll say we're pretty good friends. His name was Jordan. And y'all read his comment about WSU and them selling out. So since you're talking about recruiting, I was like, that's an eye-popping, situation at K-State, because they've been on both ends of the NIL deal. The NIL deal that lured the player away, gave him $800,000 in the car, and now they get one for $2 million.
Nigel Pack is who you're talking about.
Nigel Pack, right. But with that being said, you're talking about high schools, and I often said that the high schoolers are going to be the one that's going to be left out. And if you have that high schooler, now a trend that I'm seeing is you're seeing these freshmen in high school, whether it be boys or girls, getting offers already. And my thing is, and maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but especially me having the chance to see some high school basketball last year, and I'm glad I did because now I can see some talent that's around. I think Kansas is a good spot, which is why these coaches are coming here, especially on the girls' side. But on the men's side, don't you think now is the time to start building those relationships? Because I know Wichita State was very fortunate to pick up a T.J. Williams, but he has a teammate that's coming out next year. It has a relationship been formed there. You look at Shawnee Mission Northwest, they have a loaded team, the 6A state champions, as a matter of fact. Everybody's pretty much coming back. Their whole starting lineup plus bench players. Do you start recruiting some of those players? Because right now, one of their key players, he's getting offers at what I would call smaller division schools, who I think he could be a Division I player. They have another kid, a 7-footer, who will be a junior next year. I mean, I know you have to recruit for the right now. You have to recruit and retain, but now you also have to start recruiting for the future because I would hate to see all this talent leave because Tennessee is targeting one of the Shawnee Mission players. So how do you look at the recruiting overall? When do you start going after players in high school when they could possibly be a part of your team in, say, 2 or 3 years down the road? So how does that process?
So I don't know. I think Wichita State is a good case study on this because I think what you're going to see is the bigger schools rely more on transfers. It's pretty hard not to take the experience. I think, and I don't think high schoolers are missing out. I think their path is just a little bit different than it used to be. I think smaller schools are going to benefit from better high school players probably than they've ever had because they can offer up playing time, and that still matters pretty big. What I think could happen, and Wichita State's sort of right in this area where I think if there are places where you could maybe attract higher level high school talent and retain them, it could be a place. Some of the, if you want to call, I don't want to call them a mid-major because I think that's a little lower than where Wichita State is. But, imagine if let's use TJ Williams as an example. If TJ Williams turns into a great player, right? He was a top 150 type recruit, which is, that's not higher than the Shockers. That's about where the Shockers used to get him. But they're going to have an opportunity where some places may not, because maybe they're not in the market for the highest level transfer guys, that maybe they're able to use some of the funds that they generate more in a retention side than a recruitment side. And so those high school players, maybe a place like Wichita State is the kind of place where you could get longer term commitments from high school guys. Because if you're not going to go get in on, Doug McDaniel, you then have that, however much money it is to try and keep your own players. So I don't think there's a good answer, Anthony, right now, because I don't think we've seen peak Wichita State NIL era, basketball. I don't think we've seen what it can be if it's at its best. And until we do see that, it's hard to guess. Like, does that mean long-term high school players? Does that mean they get more active and aggressive and, in the upper echelon of the transfer portal? I think right now what we're seeing is they're just trying to retain when they do have a good player. Like they're trying not to drown in it all right now is what it seems like to me.
So let me ask you this question, since I brought up Wichita State and brought up K-State and we're talking about recruiting. Right now, if you look at their rosters pretty much on paper, and I know everybody would think, okay, they got a $2 million player, so K-State definitely has the better roster. But and I know this is putting you on the spot, so I'm going to give you until after the break that you're going to take a look at their roster and tell me position by position, who do you think actually have a better team in a head-to-head matchup? Because I know we're waiting to see that game play out in December, but
Wichita State and K-State?
Early prediction.
Oh, way too early prediction, as I like K-State quite a bit. I mean, look, K-State, I'm telling you, I like K-State as a top 4 or 5 Big 12 team. I'm way in on K-State. That's not a knock on Wichita State. I'm just way in on K-State. I'm also bullish on Wichita State. I think in the post Greg Marshall era, outside of that first year, I think this is a group that you could put right there with any of them. It's tough. It's tough. But we're going to find out a lot about Paul Mills this season. We are. Because he's got his guys. He's returned most of his guys. This is his group. Let's see what they can do now in a conference that I would say, and I would have to defer to somebody like Taylor Eldridge. I would say this, going into this season, the AAC does not appear to be nearly as strong as it appeared to be going into last season when you had FAU coming off that run that they made, when you had North Texas joining after the run that they made, when you had Memphis returning a ton and then adding Naquan. I don't think the league is as good, or it doesn't seem to me like the league is as good this coming season as it was last season, and I think the Shockers are better than they were last season on paper. I know they lost Colby Rogers,
I agree with that.
but collectively, I like what they have more. So this is a big Paul Mills year. He's got an opportunity here to wash clean what happened in year one and try to get up there into that upper echelon of the. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, but I would not say, Anthony, and we appreciate the call as we are up against that break you mentioned. I would not say that Wichita State's at the level of where K-State has ended up in this, Tommy.
Yeah, I think the American Conference is probably more balanced this year, probably will be more balanced. I don't know if it's quite as top-heavy. You mentioned FAU. They're a former Final Four team. I'm not sure that with Dusty May leaving and, that sort of run of excellence over, you would think, at FAU, that it'll be quite as top-heavy as it has been the last couple of years. Memphis is always going to go out and get top-tier talent. On paper, they look like they would probably be one of the top-heavy teams, but in reality, they kind of underperform. So it wouldn't surprise me if it was a much more balanced conference this year. And knowing that, I think that does give, quite a bit of credence to the thought that Wichita State could be right there.
Their opportunity is greater than it was a year ago. It just is. Like we think they might be better. We certainly think the league is not as good. So there's all that. A lot of basketball talk. And by the way, speaking of the Shockers, they did make it official. The Croatian player is in. He is a part of the roster. I saw that email come through. So they have made that official announcement. I don't know. I think you would set the expectations to very low for him, but you never know. It's another player, and we certainly want to mention that when it comes through, but we told you a little bit about that yesterday, so that's out there. Let's look at tonight's matchup with the A's when we come back for the Royals. We'll jump back to the conversation we had in the first hour. Don't forget, the Kenny Chesney contest for this hour is activated, so you can have your opportunity to win that. Again, text the keyword Kenny, Kenny, to the number 20357. Message and data rates apply. Winners will be chosen tomorrow evening. Good luck, everybody. We'll be right back.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite, or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say, drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, welcome back in. Rocking and rolling on a Thursday here with Sports Daily. Let's get you ready for a Royals game, day baseball. You'll hear it, by the way, today. Coverage starts at 2 o'clock. I believe the first pitch here, Tommy, is 2:30, 2:37. So you'll get full pregame coverage of the Royals. Seth Lugo trying to get this thing back on track. He has been a little shakier than he had been. Compared to his, to his past, it's kind of maybe a lot shakier, but his last start was good. His last start, he only gave up 2 runs in 6 innings. Prior to that were those 2 starts that, were not good, but he got you deep into the games at least. And then, before that was that stretch of games where it's just absolutely lights out ridiculous. Somewhere in between is probably likely. You'd love to see one of those absolutely shut them down type games, of which he's had a lot of this year. I don't know if that, I think if you can just get what you got last time out in LA against the Dodgers, it should be good enough. 2 runs in 6 innings should be good enough. It would certainly be better than what the Royals have gotten thus far in this series. But, this is the spot for Lugo to sort of reestablish himself as one of the best in the league, as this team's clear ace and somebody who in these spots can stop the bleeding.
He's also been really solid on the road for the most part this season. He's got an ERA under 2 in 54 innings on the road this season. It's a 1.83 ERA. And he's also pitched particularly well against the Athletics, at least from a wins-loss perspective. Hasn't really pitched against them a ton, only 3 appearances, but 2 starts, and he's 2-0 in both of those starts that he's had against Oakland. And like you mentioned, what Lugo did last weekend against the Dodgers in LA, of course, you're playing a much more potent lineup. You're pitching against a much better lineup with the Dodgers than you will be against the Athletics today. But I also think that, they've shown, and part of, I think, what has made Oakland kind of successful this series is that they fly under the radar a bit. And while there may not be tons of name recognition nationally, you've got a couple of guys that have, really kind of come through offensively for them, at least in this series, like JJ Bleday has hit the ball pretty well, in the first couple of games.
All high pedigree
this
guys.
season. They are. And, of course, they don't get the attention. And the wins and losses tell you what you need to know, about them overall. But there is, some talent on this team. And I think that Lugo's got to recognize when he takes the mound today that while he's not going to be facing massive names like Betts and Ohtani and Freeman, that there are some pedigree guys in this lineup that, if you're not careful, can hurt you.
He pitched against Oakland back on May 18th. He didn't get as deep into that game, partly, I think, because he was striking everybody out. So he pitched 5 2/3. He did give up 2 runs. They actually, they were taking him deep into a lot of cuts. They had 6 hits in that game, but he struck out 10. It was his second highest strikeout total for the year. So we were talking about, what kind of bets. Maybe you just attack this as a Lugo game. Maybe you just take the money line. Maybe you take his strikeouts. Maybe you take his innings pitched, and bet on him being that dude in this game, because he needs to be. This is it. This is why he's there. This is why he is, viewed as their ace. I think more than Cole Reagan's is these days. Lugo's the ace because you trust him. You trust him not to lay an egg. And in a game against Oakland, he has the chance to be dominant, and hopefully he can be dominant. And if he can, maybe Royals, maybe score, give him a little to work with there. Let him do his thing by scoring some dang runs early in the game.
All right. So answer this question for me. In the last 5 road getaway games that the Royals have played, last game of the series on the road, what's their record?
Got my eyes closed so everyone knows I'm not looking. I'm trying to recall them. I'll say, just because I know I'll say 4-1.
Flip that around. 1-4. They are 1-4 in
Only
their
the Yankees
last
game?
road. We're talking road getaway. The Yankees game was at Kauffman on the road.
Right.
The last road getaway game.
So
they're 1-4.
You better turn that around.
Yeah,
better turn that around right now. They need to get healthy. They need to get it's so hard. And again, to my original point at the start of the show, I love this about baseball, about competitive baseball. I love how maddening it is. It's one of the great things in sports. It's why in baseball, when people ask, would you trade one championship for one guaranteed championship for a decade of relevance? I would take a decade of relevance always, because I think in baseball, having relevant games every day is what makes it so great, but it can be so frustrating. And it makes you want to do things like calling a game on June 20th against Oakland a must-win game when it absolutely is not a must-win game, but it feels like it's a must-win game. And that makes it awesome. I love that about baseball, but it feels like a must-win game. I know it's not. You don't have to tell me, it's hard. It just feels that way because you can't get swept by Oakland.
You can't get swept by Oakland if you are a serious contender. If you're a team that wants to take itself seriously.
You can, but you
shouldn't.
You
shouldn't.
You could. Look, the Royals could get swept by Oakland and win 15 games in a row and we won't care. But it's just, perception is everything right now.
Well, and especially with the Guardians, they played pretty well last night, and so you can't fall any further behind.
They could heat back up, I know.
And you don't want to see that. You don't want to see the Royals cooling off and the Guardians heating back up. So I know that it might be hyperbole. I'm going to say it's a must win. I know that, at the whole grand scheme of things, it's probably not, but right now I kind of think it is.
They better not. They better not. That's all I'll say. We'll find out if they do. 2:37 first pitch coverage begins right here on KFH at 2:00. You better not, Royals. We'll be right back. We'll wrap it up, tell you what's else on the network when we return.
Sometimes people tell us, I don't get it, it's just tea. But let me tell you, we are so much more than just tea. With more than 25 flavors, the possibilities are endless. Come on in and try them all for free to find your favorite or get us on the go for your busy lifestyle. And don't miss happy hour every day for half-price cups of tea. So the next time someone tells you it's just tea, tell them to come by and find out why we say drink tea, be happy. We have more than 25 flavors. Come try them all for free.
All right, everybody, that's it. Thanks to Ryan Gilbert for hopping in with us, filling in as our K-State representative today. Fitz was a little under the weather, but a lot of good K-State basketball talk. You can go back and listen to it, kfhradio.com or the Odyssey app. Again, Jim Rome takes us from 11 to 2, and then we pick up Royals right there. After the Royals, you'll have Infinity Sports Network programming. We appreciate it. Good luck in our contest. We'll have one more opportunity tomorrow to win those concert tickets, to win some HGO. Free iced tea and coffee. Tommy, enjoy the Thursday.
I'm going to enjoy it a whole lot more if the Royals can win this afternoon. Got to get that done.
Better not, Royals.
You better not.
You better not. 869-1240. Put it on the speed dial. Call us tomorrow. We can talk all about it. We'll see you then.